Now we're ready to put together the login screen. Okay, so it's going to look something like this. Now, there's one thing that you will notice, that we have this a.reader. That seems like something that we've done before. So if we go back to our splash screen, you can see that we have, this is what I call my logo. So this structure here is what shows, at least I should say, this text here breathes this, right? It's what outputs this logo. What I can do, I can refactor this because I want to reuse that. I can right click and I'll say refactor. And let's say into a function like this. Let's name it a function. I'm going to say reader logo, and this is going to be a composable, of course, like this. All right, so we have this readable logo there. See that it's down here. And what I can do also, I can pass a modifier just in case I want to modify myself. I'm going to pass a modifier to say we have a default modifier. It's not required if we don't add it. And I'm going to pass an actual modifier. Say modifier. It's going to be our modifier that we're passing there. Modifier, let's such that I'm going to give a padding of bottom padding of about 16 dp to give that nice space at the bottom. Okay. In this case here, I don't need to pass where we're calling this reader logo. I don't need to pass anything, but in other cases, I may want to add or pass in a modifier to change the look of our logo. So this is a good idea. And so inside of our reader login screen here, this is where we're going to use that reader, right? A reader, this logo, and add other elements as well. Okay, so back to our reader screen here. We no longer need just the text. Go ahead and optimize the imports. Okay, so first thing first, put a surface there, and I'm going to pass a modifier. I'm going to fill max. Say fill max size. It's not adding the modifier. Okay, modifier as such. So I'm going to say fill max size. That will include the height and the width. Okay, and then inside, let's just get rid of unnecessary redundancy there. Let's put a column. And this column here, I'm going to make sure that horizontally we are center horizontally aligned. And we'll say vertically arrangement, and just start at the top. Well, the first thing we want to add, of course, you see, I'm going to add the logo. So conveniently, I can just go ahead and say reader logo as such. This is private. Let's just say fun so that we can access anywhere else we want. Now, to make things even better, we can remove it from here and add it into our components, right? So that it's its own entity, and we can always get that. I'm going to say components. That's the file. And then pass that composable there. So now I can just go ahead and, of course, we'll need to import that to make it work. And let's get rid of our components. And here as well, we have to do the same. Okay, separating all the concerns. That's always good. Okay, this is no longer needed. Let's remove by optimizing our imports. Okay, let's go and run the app, might as well. Okay, 2 seconds, and we should go to wonderful, a reader. All right, so the idea now is to continue, of course, and add other elements here. So let's start with putting together this structure at the top here, which is the fields, text fields. Now, because I know that I will need 2 fields here, I think it would be helpful if I created a structure, or in this case, a composable, that will allow me to actually create one field, and then I can multiply, or I can reuse that composable to create the next field. Okay, I think that would be kind of helpful. And most importantly, what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to combine these two into one composable. You will see why. The reason why is because you see here I have this other option. If you are a new user, then you will have to sign up. So instead of having to create a new set of fields, right, in this case text fields, I'll just have to reuse these text fields to create that or sign up that new user. All right, you'll see that in action. So outside of our reader logic, outside of our reader login screen there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another function composable here. And it's going to be fun. Call this user form. Okay. Very good. All right. So let's add a preview here. So we're able to hopefully get to see what we're working with. All right. So let's construct our user form. So first we are going to pass in a few variables here, a few properties that we need. So I'm going to say val email. Right, this is going to be the state. I'm going to say remember savable. I'm going to say remember here. Now, there's one topic that we haven't talked about. Now, we've just used remember as such, and it works fine. But there is another version of remember per se called remember savable. What is this? Well, the remember savable, it actually remembers this value that we have here beyond the configuration changes. So imagine that your user is typing something and then somehow they decide they're interrupted, right? Or they decide to turn the phone, or they decide to rotate the phone. And then that means then this state will be lost. Now, if you say remember savable, the state is not going to be lost, which means the values that they're entering, it's going to be recomposed along and it will stay there beyond rotation. That is something to keep in mind. So I'm going to use remember savable so we know. All right, so in this case, it's going to be a mutable state of, and it's going to be just a string like this. First value, put that all in. Oops. Now we can go ahead and convert to single lambda, line lambda there. Do the same thing with password. Mutable state of empty. I'm going to just restructure this too. And then I'm going to create another one for password visibility, because I want to be able to toggle the visibility of password, right? This, I'm going to remember savable again, keeps adding this. Should probably get a different one. Okay, mutable state of, I'm going to say false in the beginning, and then I'm going to say val, say password, focus request like this. It's going to be a focus request dot default, yeah. And then I'm going to pass the keyboard controller. And this is just going to be the local software keyboard controller, because we want to be able to say, we want to be able to get the control over the keyboard so we can do things like hiding it and so forth. So I'm going to say that current, and val, I'm going to put a valid, let's just say remember in this case. And in this case, we want to validate these two fields. So I'm going to put that inside of a remember value here. That way we are able to check that. So what is that we want to validate? Well, we can pass inside of this constructor of remember, say email that value and the password that value. Those are the values we want to validate. How? Well, I'm going to say email that value. I'm going to go ahead and invoke the trim method. And if it's not empty, like this, and password value, trim that to get the pure item. it's not empty as well. If that's true, then we know that this is going to be valid, which means we're good to go. All right. Now we're having an issue here. If you have over, it's going to say this API is experimental, okay, and is likely to change in the future. Now this is the beauty, or I guess the ugly side of Compose, is because it's still being worked on, which means a few of these APIs we're using may be changed or removed later. Okay, and so we need to acknowledge that indeed this is something that we are willing to live with by adding this experimental Compose UI annotation to the form like this. Okay, there we go. Once you do that, then that goes away. Okay, so we really haven't put together the structure here. We're just putting together the infrastructure, the variables that we need. So what we want to do is see all of these are laid out vertically, as you see. So we want to make sure that we put inside of a column. Right? That's the layout element that we've seen and we love. So right outside here, let's create a column. Now in our column here, just remember something. Every time you're adding some sort of place where you can add data, in this case text field, it's important to have some sort of scrollability if need be, because remember what will happen, especially with text field, whenever you click on the text field, the focus change everything, which means then the keyboard appears, which may bump this entire view upward and kind of obscure out part of the user interface. So having some sort of scrollability is always a good idea. We can do that by saying following. I'm going to create another variable here, say val, call this modifier. It's going to be a modifier type, so I'm going to say is equal to modifier, and then I'm going to add, first let's add a height of about 250 dp. Let's import the dp there. Okay, and then I'm going to add a background color, which is material theme dot colors background. Okay, and then I'm going to add the vertical scroll state. So in this case, I'm going to say remember scroll state. Just use that as such. Okay, and that modifier I'm going to pass inside here. Say modifier. Just pass this modifier there. It's easier that way instead of polluting this entire constructor there. All right. So we can continue. Of course, I'm going to say horizontal alignment. I want this to be centered horizontally, and vertical alignment or arrangement, difference in language there. In fact, I don't need anything vertically. I think it should be good for now. Okay, so let's go inside of our column here. This is where we can start putting together this structure, and that's what we're going to be doing in the next video.